What's going on, bitches? Wacka here. Welcoming back for some more content. I haven't really uploaded a lot to YouTube lately. I've been taking kind of a break, and even though I kind of just started back up, it's been like 4 years since the last time I've uploaded a video. But I decided I wanted to try recording something different rather than a game like on the Wii or the Switch or whatever. I decided I wanted to try some Showdown content. And what better to start with Showdown content than with a Draft League? Now, I joined this server called the WPF, and yes, there's actually two servers with the same name, but trust me, I joined the better one. Um, this league has a lot of good players in it, and I want to see how much I can learn, and maybe if people can help give me tips on how to improve, then it would be a better community. So, they put me in the lower tier draft called the Magikarp League, where a lot of the people are not as good as the people in the Gyarados, which is good for me because I'm not the most experienced with drafting. Um, but yeah, let's get started. Now, one thing to note when we first start talking about this is I was actually first pick. Which means, you guessed it, I'm gonna grab something kind of broken. And to me, Tornadus isn't really like that broken. It's just so good that in a way it's almost broken. But this thing is so good in draft. It has Regenerator, and you'll see later I have kind of this Regenerator core. It has really nice stats. Um, really good bulk. It can be a mixed physical special attacker. It's really speedy with U-turn. This generation gave it Nasty Plot, which makes it just a better special attacker. And with Nasty Plot, it's probably good to run like Air Slash with it. It also gets a lot of poison coverage. It gets Weather Ball, Psychic, Heat Wave, Grass Knot. It gets so many tools. Knockoff, Iron Tail. I don't know why you really want to run Iron Tail, but you can. But yeah, this is good for me because I'm not the kind of person that likes to draft a lot of speed. Tornadus with the 121 speed gives me a lot of advantages early in the draft because a lot of people are going for their like slower steel types or their fairies even, which I don't really mind drafting fairies or steels till later in the draft, you'll see. But considering this is probably like one of the fastest mons I'll draft, and probably the only time I'll ever get to draft Torn T, I decided to go with Torn. Next we got Tangrowth. Paired with Torn, it takes up a lot of those electric hits that Torn doesn't really want to deal with. It also does pretty decent with the rock and ground types that Torn also really doesn't deal with all that well, unless it's like Rain Dance, Weather Ball, or something. But this thing, it gets a lot of moves. It's a lot like Torn. They have, I'm pretty sure, the same attack, special attack stats. It's just a lot bulkier physically and with the HP. It doesn't have the best special defense or the best speed, but it's easy to work around it because it's almost obvious if there's a special or a physical attacker on the field. This thing, it's like Toxic, Stun Spore, Sleep Powder, so it can status a lot of things. It also gets Pain Split, although a lot of the time you're probably going to want to run probably Morning Sun or Synthesis. But I do like Tangrowth for that. It also gets Earthquake. And Grass hits a lot of the bulky waters and bulky grounds pretty hard. So that's a good reason to get it. It even gets Focus Blast for all the stupid steel types that'll probably want to come in on it. As long as Reflect, Poison Jab. So I figured along with Torn, it's a pretty decent pick. However, we are a bit weak to ice, so I decided to grab Slowking since it resists ice pretty well, and with like Focus Blast or like fire moves, it can hit back pretty hard. I do kind of have a Freeze Dry weakness, which there isn't a lot of mons that really get Freeze Dry. And considering later on I have one of them myself, so I'm not too worried about it. It has stuff like Scald, Shadow Ball, Slack Off to recover, Teleport to get out of there with like a slow U-turn basically, so I can get in with my threats easily. Um, it gets a lot of moves, even Yawn and Weather Ball. And you'll see later I'll have a Weather Setter. But yeah, that is Slowking, and I think paired with Tangrowth and Torn, it's going to do pretty decent to help soak up some of those ice hits for Torn and Tangrowth. And they also placed this thing at tier 3, and I thought I couldn't resist just not picking up this thing, especially as a special tank. That Tangrowth, it really isn't that good of a special tank, and then Torn probably is more of a speedy offensive mon for my draft, so I really did need a bit of a special wall at this point. Now I decided to actually go back up into tier 2 for my next 2 picks. We first have Hippowdon, and Hippowdon is probably one of those mons I will probably draft as many times as I can. It's one of those mons I feel like I'm so used to using it that I just know almost everything it does. And even if it doesn't do that much, it has a lot of good moves with Body Press, Crunch, Earthquake, Fire and Ice Fang, high horsepower in case we run into like grassy terrain, which I'm pretty sure one person did get Rillaboom, but I don't know if we battle him. It also has its own Weather Ball in case I'm ever wanting to use its base 68 special attack. Not that great, but it also has Slack Off, so it can also recover. All of my mons so far have recovery, except Torn, I believe. So that's pretty good. It soaks up a lot of Toxics as well as hitting back with its own Toxic. And overall, having a bulky ground type, I think, has been very valuable to me. This thing has definitely taken a lot of hits for me in a lot of other leagues I've been in, so it's one of my go-to picks for ground type rather than something like Crocodile or even Excadrill. I'd rather just have Hippowdon. But that is Hippowdon. And next we stay within tier 2 with Cinderace. I decided to pick up Cinderace like last second because I did notice our speed tiers were a bit lacking. We have this base 121, and then we have 50, 30, and a 47. So I decided we should try to pick up more speed again. So I decided with Cinderace, it's a good fire type to just like kick holes into things. With Court Change, it can kind of just puts people's rocks or spikes back on their own side, so people have to really think twice whether or not they want to run webs against me. This thing also has Baton Pass, which paired with, I believe, like Agility, I can probably Baton Pass. I don't remember the rules exactly, but I'm pretty sure you can pass one stat. Um, it also has stuff like Gunk Shot and High Jump Kick. I didn't even realize it got Shadow Ball. Pyro Ball is a really good move to just toss out, and if for whatever reason I get frozen, it's a good move to unthaw. Also gets Low Kick for a lot of heavy Pokemon like those Steel types or those Rock types. I was gonna say Steel, but we're literally a Fire type. But it also has U-Turn and Zen Headbutt. The thing with Cinderace though, and the reason why it's tier 2 instead of tier 1 or banned, is because we just banned Libero. So it is a Blaze Cinderace. And paired with like, I don't know, Endure maybe. Endure, Blaze, Weakness Policy, can even do some weird stuff, I think. I think overall Cinderace is a decent mon. I'm glad that I'm able to use it. Now this is the part of the draft where I think I was off to a good start, But from there, I really needed to fill up some other missing slots, and I do think Mega Manectric as not it's not really that great of a Mega in my opinion, but I do believe it fits on my team about as well as any other Mega probably would have anyways. So what Mega Manectric offers me is a fast electric with that base 135 speed. And it also has Intimidate with base 80 defense, which means it can tank quite a few hits, honestly. It's not that bad, and it can also learn Snarl, and it can learn Agility in case you just don't outspeed whatever it is, like Scarfed. Can run Roar. Can even run like physical sets with the Ice Beam and Iron Tail, Psychic Fangs, Fire Fang, Crunch, Body Slam, and it has Howl to boost its attack in case I ever need it. But overall, I think Electric and Fire coverage isn't even that bad. Like, a lot of ground types don't really want to take an overheat because a lot of these ground types are either like part Steel or like part something that's weak to fire, or they're not especially defensive. So I think having that is really good for Mega Manectric, paired with the Snarl, so it can take special hits as well as just being a fast Volt Switch user. I do think it has kind of a role, but people did kind of give me a hard time about picking Manectric, that it wasn't the best Mega I could have picked. And I do agree, I probably could have gone with like Altaria, and I could have gotten like, instead of Manectric, I could have gotten like Galvantula with webs, or I could have gotten like Heliolisk, Jolteon. Even regular Manectric with like specs probably just hits harder and it's more threatening than regular, but I do want to try Mega Manectric, give it a chance. And for the rest of the draft, I'm just kind of filling up some slots that I'm missing. As you can see, I didn't have a Fairy type yet, and we'll get into that, and we'll get into my Steel as well. But I picked up Scrafty. Now, a lot like Hippowdon, Scrafty is one of those picks for me that I just think does well in draft. I think with Intimidate, it just takes a lot of physical hits, and paired with an Assault Vest, because it doesn't really have the best like status moves unless you're going for like a Dragon Dance set or Bulk Up even. I think Bulk Up is probably better with Scrafty, but it has so many coverage moves that it just hits almost everything. It does have the Taunt though, so that is one reason to run like not Assault Vest. But other than that, it has stuff like Fake Out and Drain Punch, so it has its own recovery, has Knockoff. Stab Knockoff is always really good in draft. It has Ice Punch to deal with a lot of these like ground and flying types that might switch in to try to wall it. I just think Scrafty is a really good pick. At tier 4, I want to say it's probably one of the more valued tier 4 picks. And I'm glad to have picked it up. Next we have Dragalge. I didn't have a Dragon type yet, so I figured why not pick up Dragalge. I also kind of need like a grounded poison to pick up those poison spikes from, so the other team isn't, the other part of the team is a weekend, because I did notice, I believe Toxic does kind of shut down my team a little bit, especially Hippowdon. Hippowdon takes so many status moves, it's insane. But Dragalge is great. It gave it Flip Turn this generation, which means it's basically a slow U-turner. Along with adaptability, its stab moves it's basically holding like choice specs with its stab moves with like Draco Meteor and Sludge Wave. It even has Scald, and for whatever reason they gave it Play Rough, which is weird to me. It even has like Thunderbolt, Scald, Focused Blast. It doesn't really have like the best coverage now that I think about it, but it has enough where I think it's always a threat, especially with Toxic Spikes. People really have to prep for Toxic Spikes because it really does just shut down a lot of teams. So that is why I picked up Dragalge at tier 3. Uh, Along with Dragalge, I decided I wanted to pick up Articuno because I was noticing, again, my toxic weakness, and with Heal Bell support, Articuno does pretty good as a defensive mon. With heavy duty boots, its ice flying typing doesn't really make it that weak to rocks, unless it's knocked off, of course, but I do have some ways to remove. Articuno has its own defog. Cinderace has court change, so people really do have to think about setting up hazards on me anyways. Even Tornadus has defog. Articuno has freeze dry, it has water pulse down here, I believe. For whatever reason, even sunny day in case I want to run weather ball. Sunny day weather ball. It even got U-turn this gen. I don't know if it had U-turn before actually, but it has it now. It still has Roost, which puts it over like the Galarian forms. Although I believe Galarian Articuno actually has Recover. I could be wrong about that. It even has Reflect in case it wasn't enough of a defensive wall, because it is really especially a defensive wall. And I didn't even really notice how tanky it was. I was actually going to grab Cryogonal, which in itself is a really good specially defensive wall for an ice type. It's fast, that has defog and rapid spin. But I decided Articuno does the same things with Cinderace, paired with Cinderace, I think I'm not too scared of rocks. And even like weakness policy Articuno I think can do some work. It'll definitely take a hit, and then hitting back with Ice Stab and Flying Stab is really nice. So that is Articuno. Next we got Alcremie, and I will admit Alcremie isn't probably worth tier 3, and I think this is probably the worst part of my draft, is this very ending, because I didn't have a Steel or a Fairy. I planned to pick up Klefki actually, but it got sniped like the round right before I was gonna grab it. I didn't think that it was gonna get sniped because a lot of people already had their Fairies and their Steels drafted. So at that point I was like, I might as well just wait on Klefki and fill in the other holes that I have, which is probably a mistake I made. However, Alcremie does have the Aromatherapy and the Calm Mind, so it can set up pretty decently, and it's not as slow as you think it is. It actually outspeeds quite a lot with that base 64. It also has Mystical Fire for those Steel types that will want to switch in on it. It has Psychic for the poisons that might want to come in on it. Has Energy Ball for water types. Because a lot of people, I think if you don't draft a bulky water type, your draft really is a lot more weakened than it should be. It has its own recovery, it has screens. It doesn't have Moonblast sadly, but Dazzling Gleam still does pretty decent paired with Calm Mind. And also with Calm Mind, stored power is really great. It has Acid Armor for its defense, so it increases its longevity because it is pretty specially defensive. I believe it's barely less than Dragalge, and Dragalge is known to be a specially defensive monster for a Dragon Poison typing. So yeah, I think that's Alcremie. There wasn't really all too much more to it. It's a nice Gen 8 mon that I think can do quite a lot, and I think it's pretty underrated. Lastly, I picked up Metagross. Now, my team doesn't really have the best offense. A lot of my team is pretty defensive, and I decided I think Metagross is probably the best I can get out of what was left. And I didn't really realize how good I think this thing is with agility. It's massive defense, it's respectable special defense, it can run stuff like weakness policy and like agility. So basically gets like a Dragon Dance on you. Gets like 2 Dragon Dances on you if you hit it with a move. Otherwise it just doesn't die. And then it has so much coverage. It's just so threatening that I don't know. A lot of mons just don't switch into it very well, in my opinion. Even it has Grass Knot. Because I do think, if anything, Bulky Waters deal with it pretty well, but it has base 95 special attack Grass Knot. That's nice. And this gen also gave it Expanding Force. I don't think it has the Psychic terrain, but it's pretty nice. It has Sunny Day for just whatever reason. It doesn't have Weather Ball, but it has Thunder Punch and Ice Punch. I don't think it has Fire Punch, but it has Hammer Arm, Stab Bullet Punch. This thing really does punch holes in teams. It also has the Stealth Rock, which is another reason I got it, because I believe my only other Stealth Rocker is Hippowdon. Hippowdon is really good for Stealth Rock though, because it doesn't run that many sets. But that is my draft. I will say the one thing about my draft I don't like as much, and I might make trades to fix, is my lack of offense. Because with my offense, like, you can argue like Torn T with Nasty Plot, you can argue Cinderace. Manectric really isn't the best with the offense. Dragonance Scrafty can do something. Dragalge's kind of slow, but it does hit hard with like Stat Draco Meteor and Sludge Wave. And then Metagross. Everything else is pretty defensive, I'd say, and I think having more offense could definitely make my team more threatening. However, though, I do think it's a good draft, and I do think I will get some victories in the Magikarp League. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed watching. I will be back soon with the first week. I believe we go against Sean, who has a team that I think we can handle pretty decently. It'll be a fun match. Anyways, I'll see you guys later.